Yo, what up? This is D Knight, and you're listening to the Pardon the Insurrection podcast. My oh my, we've had so much going on. For starters, in case you missed it, we've got a new addition to the Pardon Pie family, Tara Dublin. Make sure you go follow her on Twitter at Tara Dublin Rocks. Also, pick up a copy of her book while you're at it. Make her day, The Sound of Settling. A very fun and interesting read compared to the things we talk about on this podcast. But yeah, we're heading toward the do or die time for the 2024 election. Go ahead and hit up JoeBiden.com. Get that man like $1 a month or something. Help his campaign staff up and get prepared to try and save our democracy. And make sure to grab like one other person you know and tell them about the podcast. Make sure they subscribe and tune in every single week. We got a lot of things coming up for you this year. We need all the support that we can get. So if you do your part and help us grow our audience, we'll do our part and help elect Joe Biden in 2024 and save American democracy. And this is the Pardon the Insurrection podcast. Yo, what up? This is D Knight, and you're listening to the Pardon the Insurrection podcast. It is pocket pardon time, baby. We got a little something for you today. The homie Ty is out with the COVID. Y'all wish her the best. Like, hope she gets well soon. Like, send her some Paxlovid or something. Like, she need a little pick me up. I think she gonna make it though. She's gonna be all right. Extra vax and all that good shit. Got a couple topics to knock out today, but before we get to that, let's send a shout out to our sponsor, Sheets and Giggles. The homie Colin D. McIntosh, if you missed it, was on the podcast last week. He was fairly fucking awesome, if I do say so myself. He also has some awesome sheets and bed linens and mattresses and pillows. Make sure you check out sheetsandgiggles.com and pick you up some goodies for you to spend your nights on every night so you can rest in luxurious comfort every single night. Sheetsandgiggles.com. They're the shit. I promise you will not be disappointed. Oh, and we got some links in the description if you want a little discount, courtesy of Pardon the Insurrection. All right, let's dive into it. So on Tuesday, we had, I know it's an off year, but we did have a number of elections taking place across the state. In Ohio, abortion won super big, which makes Republicans fairly antsy, I would imagine. In Kentucky, a Democratic governor won his re-election, much to the chagrin of Republicans again, I would imagine. In Virginia, where Glenn Youngkin was hoping to complete the trifecta of the state house, the state senate, and holding his office as governor, well, he in fact lost the state house and the state senate to Democrats. And what that spells is fucking doom and disaster for Republicans in 2024. Because my God, let me tell you, Ohio is a red state. Kentucky is a red state that Trump won by like 26 points or something crazy like that in 2020. And they are getting demolished everywhere you look. Everywhere you turn, Republicans are losing. Anytime the opportunity for people to vote, ever since like 2018 or so, every time people have the opportunity to vote, Republicans lose. They be like Chicago, all they do is take them L's. So you can only imagine after this crushing defeat of Republicans and their fucking unpopular policies everywhere all across the country that the media would be able to take away from the elections that they just witnessed evidence to suggest that Republicans are fucking doomed in 2024. And you would be wrong. They, in fact, seem to continue to rely on polls that suggest Biden is down in swing states, losing to Trump by a handful of points, regardless of the evidence they just saw of like when people actually vote. Far be it from me to understand the motivations of the media. You know what? I take that back. I understand the motivations of the media. I'm going to spell it out to you. There's a couple of different things here. For one, there is no money in being pro-Biden. And I know you're like, what? The media is super liberal. Like, all these media outlets, they lean left. That would be incorrect. They are framed as being left-leaning, so they go out of their way to present political topics in such a way that it favors the Republican point of view and dismisses the left-leaning point of view, regardless of how reasonable the Democratic side may be on a certain issue and how fucking ridiculously absurd Republicans may be on the similar issue. Well, why is money even a concern in these issues? Well, these fucking companies, they rely on eyeballs, ratings. Ratings allow them to charge a X amount of dollars in order to keep their subscription carriage fees high and to charge a significant amount for advertising and such. I mean, these companies live on, they have to get eyeballs on their shit. Otherwise, they don't make any money. And I can tell you from this podcast, like, being pro Joe Biden ain't making no money. Like, we would make so much more money if we were like, actually, I used to be a longtime Democrat, but now I'm supporting Donald Trump and the Republican Party, blah, 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 and do their little fucking grifting ass spiel. But I ain't a sellout. I'll tell y'all how I really feel and what it really is. Kissing Joe Biden's ass don't bring no dollars. And I can just tell you that from personal experience. And then you translate that to these major networks who have like hundreds of millions of dollars on the line. Yes, they're here to relay the news, but the lens through which they frame the topics that they're delivering is the way in which they can create a narrative that gets eyeballs on their network and keeps people watching and keeps them engaged. And given the fact that there's an election in 2024, they need this shit to be fucking close, because if it's a fucking blowout, if they broadcast the fact that Trump's going to get demolished in 2024, no one's going to pay attention. And that's just bad ratings. And that translates to no money. And they need money. And also for like mainstream media, like one of the pitfalls they fall into is, unlike Fox News and like right wing, media outlets and shit, there doesn't exist any network of left-wing billionaires out here funding this shit under the cover of night with, hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, to present this unfucking popular agenda that would destroy the country and ruin Social Security and Medicare for people and cut taxes for the wealthy. Like, there's nothing like that on the left. So there's no left-wing Breitbart. There's no left-wing Ben Shapiro. We don't have a version of a Joe Rogan where the public considers that person to be right-leaning, and so he's popular in right-wing circles. But if you actually listen to everything he's saying, it's typically pro-left. There's no machinery. There's no well-funded operation to pump out actual information that is supportive of the left the way there is on the right when it comes to pumping out disinformation. We just don't have it. Like, I don't know why. I don't have the answers. I'm just telling you how it is. So, like, the shit I'm talking about on this podcast does not get clicks the way the shit on even supposedly left-leaning outlets like MSNBC, spending a year talking about Joe Biden's age and then quoting polls about how people are concerned with Biden's age after they spent the entirety of like a year and a half questioning Biden's age. Like, like, that shit just gets clicks, man. And that's why they do it. And of course, like, I totally understand people's incentive to make money. Like, a business at the end of the day is much like a person. Self-preservation is the number one priority above almost anything. Though to some degree, like, that instinct really only exists in short-term incentives, because if they consider this from a long-term perspective, like the possibility that the shit they're doing might sabotage Joe Biden, not keeping the race close in 2024, but causing Biden to lose, and getting Trump elected as president would get them all murdered. So, they seem to lack the ability to think long-term about their framing decisions and the choices they make about what they air and what they talk about it and how, and the lens that it's viewed through. What good is an extra $100 million when Trump invokes martial law on day one and has all the fucking media executed? I don't know. I don't know if it's going to do him any good. But best of luck to him. At least you got us. And look, if Biden was doing a terrible job, I would be the first one to tell you. Like, if Biden, if there was any information that presumed to show that Biden didn't have a chance of winning in 2024, I would tell you. I would be like, hey man, we might need to like get up off this Biden train and find another candidate, someone who we think can win, just for, if anything, just for the preservation of our democracy. Because if Republicans somehow manage to win, like, it doesn't matter who it is. Like that Project 2025 shit, that's not a Trump specific plan. That is a Republican plan. They'll put anybody in charge and execute that shit. Like, what is it? Order 66 from Star Wars, Emperor Palpatine level shit. Like, it doesn't take Trump to pull this shit off. Like, any of them will. Like, Ron DeSantis out here talking about sending the fucking military into Mexico and killing Mexican citizens. Dude, that's fucking World War III, you dumbass. Like, what are you talking about? I guess another thing the media's probably afraid of is, like, everyone has a hangover from 2016 where Trump somehow managed to, like, win the 2016 election by the skin of his teeth. But, like, one of the things I think everybody was forgetting is that the polls are practically fucking right about Hillary Clinton. She beat Trump by 3 million fucking votes. It just so happens that because our system is so fucking wacky that a handful of swing states are the only things that typically matter every single election, and that Trump skated by like tens of thousands of votes in a couple of states, and that got him into the White House. Like, 50, 60,000 votes total. Won him the 2016 election, even though he actually lost by millions of votes. And like everyone is... they're taking an outlier and making it the fucking rule when it was really an exception. And now no one wants to get burned by saying the Democrat is going to smoke Trump or smoke the Republican candidate, even though it happened in 2020. And technically it happened in 2018 in the midterms and 2022 when there was a supposed red wave coming that never materialized because they couldn't help but push the narrative, even though there was nothing to suggest that it was ever going to happen. And they were fairly disappointed when it didn't happen because they couldn't trash Joe Biden to get the clicks up. You see it now, don't you? That's okay. We're going to keep it real on Pardon the Insurrection. We're not going to do no Ari Melber type shit where we telling you we keep it real and then we try and blame Democrats for the mess that Republicans made. Like when he tried to say the Democrats were responsible for Republicans not having a Speaker of the House, even though Republicans set the fucking rules up that way specifically so they could do exactly what they did, like exactly what Matt Gaetz did when he had Kevin McCarthy recalled, which, again, Matt Gaetz is a fucking Republican. Doy. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm fed up with them. I'm fed up with these people. If you can't tell, like they're the whole impetus for why we're doing this podcast in the first place. They fucked it up so bad after the insurrection on January 6th. I was like, oh, of course, the media is going to take this opportunity to reassess and reevaluate the way that they have been conducting their business over the last half decade, all through the Trump administration. They're going to provide a stable and solid foundation of accurate information and elevate the discourse and put the spotlight on the dangers of our democracy and what a threat to America Republican. No, they did none of that shit. They resorted to the same fucking dumb ass bullshit that got us Trump in the first place. And they're trying to do it again. They're trying to do it again. And you want to know how I know they're trying to do it again? Because just take a look at fucking NBC. MSNBC, ever since they had that under the table arrangement to have, Trump come on and do his fucking wacky shit for an hour on Meet the Press and didn't fact check a single goddamn thing he said, even though they recorded it days earlier, they have been off the rails. And that's MSNBC. That's supposed to be right-wing liberal shit. And then pumping this Trump disinformation out into the world and making it prettying it up, putting makeup all over the fucking pig and trying to make it presentable and trying to normalize this crazy shit, even though days before that Trump said he was going to execute Mark Milley, his hand-picked defense secretary. What the fuck is going on over there? I don't know. It's wild. And it didn't even stop there, because guess what they just did this week? Oh, they hosted the Republican and GOP presidential debate, which is, in normal times, which it would be totally acceptable behavior. Like, hey, there's a presidential primary for one of the parties who's not in power. All right, well, they got to host their shit on some kind of TV network, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC. Like, I get it. A primary debate is a newsworthy endeavor and should be broadcast, except for the fact that all of these candidates are fucking crazy. Every last one of them are batshit. Bonkers. They live in insane land. And then they get 2 hours. You platform these crackheads for 2 hours and let them say absolutely wild, off the rails shit. You treat it like it's totally normal and no one calls them out. And like the thing they just got hammered on in elections, like 24 hours before abortion, you don't even bring it up for like 2 hours. Like, what are we doing? What kind of world are we living in where the people who are supposedly, supposed to be the responsible adults in the room are treating the end of our democracy like a fucking horse race? It's insane. They're gonna get us all killed. At this rate, we're fucking doomed. Like, unless this podcast becomes the biggest thing in America, like, we're fucked. Oh. Meanwhile, in reality, actually elected Republican officials are fucking dumpster fire. Like, you may not be aware of this, although I feel like the media has spent entirely too much time on this, but Comer's investigating the Biden family just to... Like, they couldn't even get a Speaker of the House, so they had to shut the investigation down for a few weeks. But they're right back at it. Comer's on this kick of trying to accuse Biden of financial crimes, even though, like, Biden shared his tax returns for multiple years with us. They've been made public, unlike Trump. Like, we know every single dollar Biden's ever gotten and where it came from. But Comer insists yet again. So one of the things that developed over the course of the last few weeks is this check surfaced of a repayment to Joe Biden from a personal loan that he gave to his brother, that his brother repaid over the course of a few months. In 2018, when he was not a candidate or an elected official, wasn't running for office, wasn't in office. Totally normal for wealthy people, or in this case, not broke people like Joe Biden. Because, again, he was one of the poorest members of Congress for like the entirety of his stint in the Senate. But yeah, totally normal for people in a position such as Biden, who get paid a fairly significant sum for speaking fees and book engagements, to like loan family money, and his brother paid it back. Well, Comer wants to impeach Biden over the fact that his brother repaid a loan. Because, I guess to them, it's an anathema that people pay back loans. Well, as it turns out, James fucking Comer loaned the exact same amount of money to his brother, too. The hypocrisy never ends. It never stops. Like, you can't... Not only did he loan money to his brother, it's like literally the exact same dollar amount, $200,000 to his brother. Where'd he get that money from? Everybody asking them questions. What's the salary of a House representative? Ain't it like $144K? That's 2 years of paychecks, homie. Like, I don't know how much you make listening to this podcast. Not make from listening to this podcast, but if you're listening, I don't know how much money you make every year, but imagine loaning 2 years worth of paychecks to your dumb ass brother. Oh yes, it's starting to seep in how absolutely absurd it is that James Comer, who ain't making nearly as much money as Biden made off of selling a book and doing a bunch of speaking tours once he left the White House. How'd he afford that? Got a lot of questions. Maybe someone should subpoena him. Man, it's unbelievable. But that's not all, folks. It appears as though our Speaker of the House, MAGA Mike Johnson, has shut down the House of Representatives for the rest of the week. It appears as though we won't reach an agreement to fund the government, which I assume will be shutting down next week, unless there's some sort of last-minute arrangement, a continuing resolution or such. I don't know. But appears he had more important things to do than paying the government's bills. It appears as though he has arranged for a trip to Paris, France. Oui, oui. So apparently there's some Republican think tank organized type shit taking place in France, where a bunch of right-wing individuals are scheduled to speak at the Worldwide Freedom Initiative. And if you don't know what that is, because it contains all these nice and sanitary words, I assume it must be a plot to end freedom across the globe. Because that's typically how Republicans handle the naming of their groups and think tanks and their conservative outreach programs and such. So according to the website for this event, I believe Johnson was scheduled to speak today, Friday, at the event. And reporters were asking his staff if that was the reason why the House concluded its business early and shut down on Thursday. And the staff, of course, replied that Johnson wasn't scheduled to speak. And I don't know if he attended any event in Paris or anywhere else overseas this weekend or not. But if he did, considering he's on the list of speakers, can somebody explain to me how this dude bought a plane ticket for a flight overseas with cash? Because according to him, he ain't got no bank account. And that concludes this episode of Pardon the Insurrection.